Hello, everybody. I was muted on the internet, not here. I'm sorry about that. And I'm sorry about the tiny glitch as Michael started talking with showing you the wrong screen. We're on the right screen now and everything is happy. I'm glad to be here. Oh, and you might notice I've moved different background. This is the new background from now on. So oh, hang on a second. Hang on a second, guys. It says that they can't hear us. So why would they not be able to hear us? This is... Oh. Well, then should we hang up for a minute and try to figure this out? But then how would we know? Nothing's changed. No, that's the problem. You guys are not muted at all. I just have to find out. I'm so sorry, everybody. So this is the display capture. I don't know. I'm not really sure how to troubleshoot the desktop audio other than rebooting my computer. I know you guys are hearing me, but you're not hearing them, and so our lovely guest and my desktop. Oh, maybe this is the... Hang on. I think I got something here. I'm sleuthing. Say something. No. Hang on, maybe we can...
Coming from?
What about... Oh, I fixed it. Yeah.
All right.
Please,
Welcome back, people.
please confirm internet. Yay.
We are waiting.
I believe it is fixed. My microphone slider is sliding.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, looks like everyone is saying that we're back on.
Sweet.
So welcome everybody.
Sorry
If you didn't
about
hear us
that.
In the beginning, we introduced ourselves, and do we need to do that again, or do we want to just go forward?
Yeah,
Questions?
let's introduce quickly Willow, trauma consultant.
Hi, everyone.
Dennis, freedom facilitator.
Blessed love, everyone.
Michael, Opportunity Ambassador,
Hello, everybody. Welcome.
and Luis Fernando Mises, the Emancipated Human. There we go. We're all on.
All right. Thank you
There,
for your
everybody's
patience, everyone. Now let's get into this. We got a lot to cover, and Luis has got all kinds of wisdom to shed on us. So let's get to it.
Okay, so the first question that we had was why do you think it's so much more common to have a conflicting, unhealthy relationship than it is to have one that is communicative and a loving relationship, essentially?
I think that's it's both challenging and easy at the same time. There's a lot of times where when we enter into conflict, there's five conflict modes, and one of them, is avoidance. We avoid. We try to compromise. We try to push forward, or we try to open and allow people. So all that's to say, sometimes, or actually most times, we feel like when there is a discrepancy, we need to win, and if we win, our truth, prevails, and we are right. But if we feel that if we lose, a part of us is like it dies, it's wrong, whatever. So there's this idea that what?
We can hear you, Agnieszka.
Oh,
So the idea is that instead of just saying, well, maybe there's something that that I don't know. Maybe instead of saying, well, I tend to be faster with my mind than some people, so I could like slice people's thought processes and just kind of like, even though they may be right. But so the idea is not to do that, but to be honest and like ask ourselves, is there some truth in this, or even better, like instead of fighting, instead of like trying to prove yourself right, how can I prove that person right? What is right about that? And then when you hear that person and then you try to understand their thought process, they feel heard, they feel seen, and then they're not fighting back, So that takes enormous emotional intelligence. And it takes like really knowing who you are and knowing that you're not your ideas. And actually, if you prove me wrong, gosh, I owe you, because now I'm not wrong anymore. So we go from the idea of like having to win and lose to win and learn. So there's no losing, even though so if you're right and I'm wrong, then I don't lose, because I still win. Now I'm right. Now you help me understand a better part of the truth, or a better part of life. So there's this myth that you are either right or you lose, or you're wrong, and then you look like an idiot or whatever. So there is, like, growing up, we have this mentality that, we cannot make mistakes because, oh my gosh, but in reality, who doesn't make mistakes? I make mistakes all the time. And I've done leadership development for like 10, 11 years. And one of the things that I see over and over again is that a lot of the leaders just kind of make shit up, even if they don't know the answer, just because they don't want to look incompetent. But then what that creates also is people don't trust them, because they're like, yeah, no, he's just talking shit. So the idea would be like, be honest. And I do this with my kids too, like it happens everywhere. It's like anytime that you have a relationship with anybody in any kind, it's okay to say, I don't know. Or it's okay to say, one of the things I do is help me understand. Tell me more. What do you mean by this? Or when you say this, what does that mean? Because we know we may be talking about the goddamn same thing, just with different perspectives. So, and then we're just fighting. And then, you realize like, oh my gosh, we've been fighting over this for an hour and we're both right. We're just talking about it with different words. So, like the very first thing that I talk about is like the idea of fallibility. Like, maybe I'm wrong. Let's explore that, So we are married to this idea that we have to be right. And otherwise, if we're not, then we're like complete idiots. And I think that's a really toxic thing, because and this also turns into like the parenting situation where the parent is always right, and then you as the kid, like you cannot like teach the parent, you cannot prove the parent wrong or whatever. But what that means is that every generation is going to be dumber and dumber and dumber, like, because the patriarch or the matriarch is always going to be right. So that's stupid. So like growing up, my mom told me, she said, right now you're little and I'm teaching you the world, but you're going to grow up and you're going to go out into the world, and I'm not going to be updating my operating system, and then you're going to come and teach me shit, and then we both grow each other. And so that means that, like, she's here and then she wants me to be smarter, she wants me to be faster, tougher, whatever, and then I do that same thing with my kids. I tell them, you're going to be taller, you're going to be stronger, you have to be smarter. So like prepping them up to, instead of like I am the dad and like whatever, no, like always make it better. Like the idea is to make each other better, to grow one another, or not keep that knowledge just for you. So as we spread out the knowledge, as we spread out the love, and being wrong is okay. So I think that, that's a myth that I've been trying to dispel for many years, that it's only win and lose.
What I'm
Something
hearing.
that, oh,
Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Dennis.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say one. Well, go ahead, Dennis. It's yours.
So what I'm hearing is a perspective that really matches a viewpoint that I have, which is that if there's any discrepancy or any disruption in relationships, in loving relationships, or the lack of loving relationships in your outside world, with your environment, with people, family, society, your community around, then it always is a reflection of the relationship that you have with your own self, truly. So if you don't fix that first, if you don't establish a loving relationship with who you are, with your true self, then there must always be some feedback system, that actually reflects to you. Hold on, there's something to look at right here. And so that's kind of like what I heard you saying as well, that it's really about leveling yourself and having a strong foundation by knowing who you are, and by relating in a positive and in a loving way with yourself, so that can then be the foundation for you relating to other people around you. Did I hear you right there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always about, like, all relationships start with the self. And if you feel like an emptiness or an abandonment or a hole or whatever, you're going to find people and circumstances that are going to prove you're right. So, oh, nobody loves me, or oh, whatever. Otherwise, like, when you are coming from a place of fullness, gratitude, from love, you're going to find those relationships. And that's, it's called like self-fulfilling prophecy.
Nice. Yeah, Mike.
What I was going to mention is, and what you were saying about people have a hard time being vulnerable. And like you were talking about, like, maybe I'm wrong, but nobody really has that opportunity, or at least nobody practices that opportunity of being humble and and essentially being vulnerable. How could people do more of that and feel more comfortable doing that?
It actually takes a whole lot more guts to do that than to just like play dumb and that everything. Because like vulnerability. So for instance, actually, when like I like to talk about this one, when you're kind of pokey and you don't want anybody to get through, and people approach you, you're like, but you're super close in your heart. But what happens, you open up and you expand, and you're expansive, and there's a lot of movement through. People can see through you, like, so the idea of that is, if you own your own shit, if you own your shadow, if you talk about it, then nobody can hold it against you. So that's like a really huge benefit of it. So for instance, yeah, I am ADD, I forget things. I will own that, I'm not perfect. I do all sorts of things. But the idea is like, can you own your shit? Are you able to make up for that? And like creating those kinds of, because all of us have some proclivities that may not be wholesome, just knowing, okay, little Billy is having a hard time and whatever. He is usually late, so I'm not going to put him on the early schedule. I'm going to put him on the night schedule. Like knowing how your people work, how your relationships work, and moving through that. Now there's a difference between that and completely without any kind of judicious, complete acceptance of the person also means um, how am I trying to say this? There's a lot of communities, especially spiritual communities, that say, we're gonna like radical acceptance, but that also means that they're gonna accept all the shit. You don't have to accept shit. That's a huge difference. Like, yeah, I mean, we love you, but you need to like. There's some guidelines, like bedside manners. So there's like a balance of I'm vulnerable instead of like, yeah, I'm such a piece of shit, you know me, and I'll never change. This is me. Versus like I have some things that I'm working on. That vulnerability is super powerful.
Absolutely.
I wanted to touch on because I think of things in ways of like triggers. So I find that for me, being wrong was a really, really big trigger. I didn't want to be wrong because I expected something bad to happen. Because as a child, when I did the wrong thing, when I got the wrong answer, when I didn't do the right thing, I usually got punished. And it wasn't like with the natural consequences, it was external consequences and then later on abuse. So like I think that I imagine that there's a bunch of people out there just like me who are literally reacting to the fact of I just can't be wrong. I can't be constantly getting things wrong because getting it right means you're a good person and getting it wrong means you failed. And I think that stems a lot from a childhood.
And I think that's a really important thing that you mentioned, because I think that 99% of the traumas come from childhood. And I see this in ceremony, shamanic ceremonies with people. I see this in like consulting, coaching people. And what you're bringing up is supremely important. So we grow up and, as parents, like our child sees us now. They don't see us when we were 10. They don't see us when we were 5, where we did stupid stuff all the time, right? They see us now and they're like, they have their shit together. So when you, like, they spill the milk and you're like, God dang it, you're like tired from work and whatever. So you like just lose your shit. To them, like they're failing you and they don't want to do that. So they feel bad. So they're going to hide things now. And then you're going to get even more angry because of that. So it's a cycle that just goes to shit all the time. So, one of the things that I do with the kids, like they do something, I'm like, okay, just clean it up. I mean, whatever. Just make sure that, so clean it up. And did you learn your lesson? What is the lesson? Well, I am supposed to grab the jug with both hands. Okay, you learned. We're good. Or maybe don't put the cup next to the edge of the table, whatever it may be. Or, at some point, I think my daughter was age and she lost her iPhone. And my brother was like, you're not going to punish her? I'm like, I think losing her iPhone is like punishment enough, So I talked to her. I said, what did you learn? I learned not to leave my phone just anywhere and leave it in my pocket. Okay, I did not buy her another iPhone. Then she worked and saved and paid for her own iPhone with her own cash at once. So the idea of this is not just being punitive, because actually punishing does the opposite. Like people are not going to open up and tell you because they don't trust. They're going to be punished. So the idea is to, yeah, I make those mistakes too, and being like vulnerability of that is like, yeah, I make that too. Like let's work together on being better at it. Because I mean, at this point, I'm 37. I still spill milk. Like I still drop stuff. I still break things. And it's not like I'm clumsy or anything, but we all make mistakes. So, and not just that, but whenever you drop things and then they're going to tell you, you dropped things too. Who the hell are you? I'm your dad. You're not supposed to talk to me like that. So it creates a horrible toxic cycle.
I just remember the example as I'm very I think in images. So when we were touching upon vulnerability, as a capoeira teacher, I say, wow, that I see that all the while, because sometimes, and it takes a lot of guts and strength, as you said, to I will put myself in a vulnerable position. So I will open my guard, and I will therefore maybe in a situation in the game, we don't call it a fight, but it's a game. So it's not going anywhere. So what I'm going to do, like I'm going to open up. So I open my guard, or I do like a movement that's completely open, or like one cartwheel or whatever. It's like, whoa, that has no value whatsoever in a fight sense, and I'm completely opening up myself. But that can trigger the other one then to basically attack. But if I open up myself knowing that I'm exposed and I'm exposing myself, and therefore I trigger the other one to make a move, to make an attack, to go inside, and if then that gives me the option then to explore or to use, in the game, or to play with his openness, because you cannot attack without opening yourself. And that counts, whether it's capoeira, boxing, whatever, any move, any attack you do, you always open up yourself to some kind of degree. So it's like, then it becomes like a chess game. So it's like, okay, nothing is happening, there's like the situation is kind of even. So it's like, what I'm going to do, am I going to like try to force something, or am I going to ease off, make myself vulnerable, and invite the other one then to make the first move? And then that can basically trigger an exchange, or in our sense, like a conversation, because that's what it really is an exchange of, attack, defense, counter attack. So it's always like it's a question, then there's an answer, then the other one asks a question. So it should be like a back and forward conversation. So that's like like a metaphor that I could see playing out right now, that sometimes if there's a situation where there's conflict, or where people are insecure, and you don't know what kind of move to make, or you're causing conflict, then it's like just to ease off, relax, and just make yourself vulnerable, or say, admit that, okay, I was wrong, maybe I'm wrong, like, you give it to me, tell me, what did I do wrong? And then then maybe the other one is doing a great attack, and then of course it's a thing of respect, then, where you don't attack in order to hurt, but you attack to show where I was open and where I was vulnerable. And then that's like, oh, that's great, that's the learning thing. Then it's like, okay, you got in with your foot or with your job or whatever it is, and like, but you did not hurt me, because you overcame my guard or my defense, and you still showed your respect for my physical integrity, and you showed me I was open, I saw it, everybody know it, I learn, I will close up myself. And so it becomes like a respectful game, basically a back and forward, where there can be an exchange, and where there can be actually joy in that. So you invite the attack, and then, but there has to be the trust also, that the attacker is not doing it in a spiteful way, or in a way to hurt you, but actually to teach you, and then everybody can learn within that game.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And there's one thing that I tell people, to see feedback as a gift. And if somebody cares enough to tell you that you're messing up, that should be cherished. If I don't care about you, I'm just gonna move on. Like, I think that indifference is worse than hate. Like, I just don't care, whatever. But if I care about you, like, and I was, I think, in like fourth grade, and we were gonna take a picture for the school. And one of my friends, name is Daniel, he approaches me and says, Luis, you have a little bit of bad breath. And I got mad. It's like, oh yeah, bitch, well, you too, you know? So like, he approached me without telling anybody else, just close to me, to let me know that something was not right. And what did I do? I got pissed, you know? So now, 30-something-year-old dude, I think about it, I'm like, that person cared about me because of how they delivered the feedback, and they had the balls to tell me that, you know? So when somebody tells you those things, you have to take it instead. Like, it feels bad because nobody wants that, you know? Nobody wants to be wrong. Nobody wants to be stinky. Nobody wants any of those things. But I'm so grateful that those things happen, you know? And it's obviously also like a really important thing, delivery. Because if you're just like, you know, your body language, like, what the hell, you're doing this, you're stinking, like, nobody's gonna hear you out if you're just like spouting out stuff and being angry, and just like your mannerisms are so rough. You know, there's some people that are like super, super rough, and nobody's gonna, and then they're like, I just tell them the truth all the time, but they don't hear me, I'm honest. I'm like, well, yeah, you're also an asshole. Like, I mean, you know, you have to, you know, your delivery has to be such that people would want to hear you, even though you're telling them to go to hell, you know? So it's both ways.
In
I've-
our
I've got-
household.
well,
You want it or
do
me?
you mind? Yeah,
Go
let me
ahead.
go. Yeah, I think this kind of fits into this spot here, Luis, with forgiveness. You know, I think to me this is kind of a really essential piece, and I think it kind of fits in with what you're talking about. But how important is forgiveness? And you know, how do you go about really kind of facilitating forgiveness when it comes to things where somebody does something wrong or somebody does something that maybe hurts somebody else, and how do you go about uh, facilitating, having an environment of forgiveness? Because I think forgiveness is such an important tool that for the most part, and certainly even for ourselves, it's such an important tool. But what do you think about that?
Well, one time during San Pedro ceremony, they showed me that karma is actually nothing but us holding on to stuff. So if somebody does something to you and you're just holding that in and creating resentment and all of that, that's just you being pissed, and that's hurting your liver. That other person, like, whatever. So forgiveness, I think it's even more important for ourselves to be able to release that. And I think, there's something about, I mean, I'm not necessarily a religious person, but there's something I really liked about the Old Testament, which is the idea of the Jubilee. Like after 7 years, people will just erase all this. It's like, okay, let's start new. But that also requires a lot of responsibility in the person, because you're not going to be just racking up debt, But the idea is like, yeah, I forgive you. Let's start again. Nobody wants, it's so heavy. And like all the emotions get stuck in the body. Actually, I have a couple of MDs in the family. My aunt said that most diseases are psychosomatic. And what that means is they start in the mind and then they manifest in the body. So if you're like holding resentment, if you're angry, or if you're like whatever, like, I mean, you're going to get some disease of some sort. I mean, I think it was Louise Hay who wrote a book that has all the diseases and how they're linked to a modus operandi in your mind. Like,
Yeah, it's called Heal Your Body by Louise Hay.
So, the idea of forgiveness primarily is for ourselves, but also like when I mess up, and then I really like the idea of repentance is really powerful. So if I made some mistake and I really regret it, and then you forgive me, you give me an opportunity to redeem myself. So it is also, both ways. Like it is good for you to forgive, because then you don't have to deal with that and carry that through your life. But also the other person, they are able to renew themselves. So there is this idea that, God in one hand has justice, but in the other one has forgiveness. So if we all got justice for everything we did, we'll be screwed. Can you imagine if you actually got everything that you've like, I mean, no, this world wouldn't work. There's got to be a lot of gratitude, forgiveness, a lot of grace, So as we move on to like, we just like have to be to a point where one of my mentors, Howard Behar, former president from Starbucks, he said to me, Luis, not everything we do we get paid for. President of Starbucks. And whenever something happens, like you can just let it go, like it's okay. And the universe works in Austrian economics. It abhors a vacuum. And like that doesn't, so you don't have to hold that, like you can just let it go. It's okay. Like let it go. One of my teachers, Akashic record reading lady, she was connecting to the Christ consciousness, and she said that the idea of turning the cheek doesn't mean that you're gonna be just meek and take all the pain and suffering. It like what she was getting out of it is when something hits you, you just like don't focus on it. Focus on the results that you want. That's turning the cheek. Just focus on your true north. Where are we going? And that's the goal. That's where we're going, because life is gonna be full of like suffering and pain and all of that. And if you're just focusing on that, then you're not gonna get anywhere. So forgiveness for yourself, for others, and then makes life lighter,
Awesome.
So what about controversy? Like, how does being controversial and relationships, how does that mix? Have you ever had any? Have you ever lost any relationship because of being controversial?
Oh, okay. Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh. So, and this is something that happens to like new anarchists, I see. And we first wake up and we're angry, and we're
I
like,
call
"Do
that
you
the
not
angry
see this?"
phase. Whenever I
Right.
see it, I'm like, you're in the angry phase, and it's totally normal, and it will pass. Learn how to channel your anger.
Hopefully it will pass. So, at some point I was on that, and a couple of my cousins stopped talking to me. And like it was not, I was not kind back then. And given this was like 10 years ago, but regardless. So, yeah, there's a point where you have to be able to understand that there is enough reality for a couple of people or 5 people or 10 people to share, even though they may be different things. So, one of the, like, I have really good friends that see the world very differently than me. So what we do is like, well, tell me more, help me understand, and all that stuff. So we still hold our beliefs, but the idea is not like to prove them wrong and prove me right, but like, how can we have this pool of shared meaning where we can understand each other more, instead of, so like, there's the thing, like, are you really in for the truth, or are you in to be right? Because if you're in to be right, there's going to be constant fight, constant battle, and like, like, it's just so useless, it's not profitable. But if you're in for the truth, then you will allow yourself to be persuaded, you will allow yourself to see other things. So I imagine that like every person is like a page of a book, and if you just read that one page, you don't know what the hell the book is all about. So the more that you connect with people and see what the hell they think and how they think and why they think that, there's more pages of the book that you read, and then you have a better sense, even though you still have your page, but now you have a more, like, a broader description of how the world works.
So, is there a special art in creating these conversations so that they don't cause rifts?
I think just like really being married to the truth instead of being right, you know? So one of my friends, his name is Griffin, he started teaching me about connecting to truth, and not just like saying, oh yeah, you're right, whatever I read. It's like, what does that feel like? Do you, because we have like some of the brain cells also in our gut and all of that. So like really connecting to yourself. How does that feel? Because you can get those, somatic sensations. And so yeah, that feels true. So connecting to truth, and that, like, even when somebody tells you how, you did this subpar, or how, like, instead of hiding, you just sit with it. Yeah, yeah, there is some truth to it. I feel it. So let's explore that. But there's got to be a lot of emotional intelligence from both people, because if you're the only one that like admits to it, and then, oh yeah, gotcha, you're not going to open up with that person. There's got to be enough trust, enough love, if you will, to be able to open up in that fashion. And then what happens is, like, this is called Theory U by Otto Scharmer. The levels of listening. And at first it's downloading, when somebody's talking and you're already thinking on what to shoot back. And then, like, so on and so forth. And it gets to the one that is pre-sensing. And that's the fourth level of listening, wherever, like, my friend River and I get to that, or when I'm doing coaching, and we just, like, the world kind of slows down and things are like denser. And then, like, the conversation, like, him and I are creating consciousness as it expands, as time progresses. And that's when we're like seeking truth. And it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about truth. So getting to the point of pre-sensing is like a really advanced part of listening. And it takes meditation, it takes grounding practices, it takes, like, really, considering that the other person, has a lot of to offer, or part of the divine, if you will,
Well, you had a
What has
question.
been your
Oh,
experience
go ahead.
on that? I'm really interested in that pre-sensing. How did you develop that to a degree that you can use it, voluntary, and of course you touched upon that it requires somebody who is, at a similar level. And how would you practically put you in the place, or what kind of environment do you create in order to facilitate a process like that?
Yeah, well, you you need you can do it with somebody that really knows it, and then I can hold space for people, like a small group, for us to get to that point. So in other words, you need a seasoned practitioner, and then people that trust you and are willing to get to that point. And or you need a couple people that are on the same level, or kind of like you cannot like, so people are open and willing to do that. And I mean, if you just really like, I mean, the freaking, I don't think I have it here, but the freaking Theory U book is like this thick, like 3 inches thick. And it's like 30 hours on like Audible. It's it's a chunk. And, but it's worth the read, like, you know, so, and he has some, you know, one of the things is like, it's so obscure. You cannot find it on YouTube. There's none of that on YouTube. So if you want to really learn about it, you have to buy the book, and it's not really that expensive. But that gets to a point of like really connecting with your true self and the other person, and you know, like the Matrix, whenever like at points during the movie when things slow down and even the music sounds like, oh, that kind of stuff, or when like he's doing the bullet stuff, like that's what it feels like when you're entering to pre-sensing. Also, it's connected to the idea of flow.
What's the book again?
Theory U.
Theory U.
The other one, like from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, well, the guy that wrote about flow, you can get to the point of flow as you're, you know, when like I used to play varsity basketball and I didn't know what the hell flow was, but I get to a point where there was like a tunnel in the basketball court and only the people playing existed, and the game and the people became one, and there was no time and everything else was like gray around you. You're into a level of high intensity and skill and high difficulty. So it has to be that, otherwise you will not get to that. If it's too easy, you're going to get bored. If it's too hard, you're going to get overwhelmed. There has to be a sweet spot to be able to do that. So, you know, like even in the conversation as you're having with somebody, you know, it's not going to be just like the weather. It has to be some like more meaningful stuff.
Go ahead, Willow.
Well, I was just thinking if we had technically already answered this question, but I'll give it a shot. What do you think is the most influential factor contributing to the corruption of loving relationships?
Unclear, untransmitted expectations. Because I think that, you know, if you just have the expectations in your mind and you want the other person to do them and then they don't do them and then you get pissed and then they get pissed that you're pissed because you never told them. So, you know, the one thing that I will always, like a complete consensualist, like, and this is also part of self-fulfilling prophecy, Pygmalion effect, like you form expectations and then you communicate your expectations. And then the person either will say yes or no, and then you have the result. So it always, you know, starts with the communication of expectations, because otherwise, like, you know, you cannot not have expectations. There's some people say, well, I don't want to have any expectations. Well, you don't want any relationship, like plain and simple. There is something that's needed from both sides. What do you need from me? Let's see if I can reach that. If not, how can we find mutual ground? How can we connect? How can we expand? How can I learn how to do that and grow my skills? How can I communicate better? So in the Babylonian myth of creation, the hero here is Marduk. And he tells all the other gods, he said, you know, if I go after Tiamat, which is the goddess of chaos and nature, all of you guys, you know, are going to listen to me. So ultimately, Marduk wins. But why does he win? Because he has eyes all around his head. That means that he can see clearly. And then he speaks magic words. What does that mean? That he can communicate clearly what's happening. And that's how we bring order out of chaos, by being able to pay attention and to communicate what's really there.
And that goes back to your idea about charm, Mike.
Yeah, I had a experience just not too long ago, a little workshop on charm and how to go about charm. You know, there used to be schools, and pretty much most women would always do a couple years of charm school. and that's no longer practice. But there is so much about being charming in regard to kind of creating situations in which you can be charming for other people, or you can charm them into warming up to a certain situation. There's all kinds of avenues with that, but
Since
that
we are
that's
bringing this up on live, it's a little known fact actually that charm school doesn't just teach you how to eat with the right fork, how to walk in the right way. Like it does teach you all of that stuff, the etiquette of like what you're supposed to do, but more importantly, it actually teaches you how to navigate a conversation in the appropriate way that does not put you in jeopardy, does not make you a liar, and upholds your family's honor, like status. So it was actually just a way of navigating conversations intellectually. So not a lot of people know that. People just think it's like, oh, I know how to use the salad fork.
But you know, it's interesting because I don't remember if I was talking to one of our metaphysical people, Krista, Catherine, somebody, and they said that women were focused on painting and making music in the household because their responsibility was to keep peace in the household, to dissolve arguments, to diffuse strife. And so it was considered when music was playing in the household, then people became less angry and they relaxed more. And so that's maybe the roots of charm school actually come to actual charm, as in magic use, because they were using the music to manipulate the moods around them. I didn't connect that the other day, but now that I'm thinking about it.
And like one of the things that I've noticed is being like a housemaker, together, let's work on this. And then you're also growing them because they're learning things, and you're able to like play music and create environment, create like an environment of where everybody wins. And then you feel like you want to be there, you want to join, you want to help, even though it's sleeping, and you want to do it because there's cool music and because the person is telling you about there is that, like the judges being present, because the level of presence is what heals. If you can see when somebody's not really looking at you, like, yeah, whatever, like on the phone, like, but if somebody actually looks at you, you'll sometimes feel freaked out. It's like, okay, I'm not used to this level of attention, that's kind of weird. But when people really listen to you, when you pay attention to them, you're transformed. There is a psychoanalyst called Carl Rogers that says that enlightenment and like we can grow and we can expand through dialogue. So as I'm asking you questions, I'm learning about you, and vice versa. We end up being different people that are healed. So just the art of being a good conversationalist brings tons of healing and presence to people.
So we have a question from the audience. Shambhavi would like to know if she thinks that lots of breakdowns come from lack of self-knowledge or self-respect, and what is our take on that? Don't all speak at once.
I'll let her. Go ahead.
I would tend to agree because I had the same thought when Mike was talking about forgiveness and how important is that to your relationships. And he made the comment, and it's also probably, really good for the self and, loving yourself. And I was like, well, actually, I think that's where it starts. Your relationship with yourself is always where healing starts. What was the question again? Because I lost my train of thought.
Lots of breakdowns come from lack of self-knowledge / self-respect.
Yeah. Okay. So, when you're trying to communicate needs, you either communicate them effectively or ineffectively, and ineffectively usually causes the arguments. So I think a lot of conflicts do come from trying to express a need, or not knowing what need needs to be expressed or needs to be addressed at that time. And it's usually a complication with the self. You fix yourself. This is what I do with all my clients. Agnieszka, you've experienced this where you come to me and you're like, so-and-so did this. And I say, okay, so-and-so did that. That must have felt awful. What else did so-and-so do? What else did so-and-so do? Just rage at me for a few minutes. And then I go, all right, now why does that bother you so much? because it's always you. Like, you can rage and you can be upset about someone else's actions, and that's perfectly understandable because we have reactions to other people. But why does that trigger you to have an action? Why does that trigger you to not be able to let go of something? There's something in you that is not being met and not being addressed. So I'd say yes, I would agree with Shimbabi.
I feel that I am truly on a journey to self-discovery and to uncover and unveil myself. That's why I'm here, why we're all here. I will just throw it out like that. So any how would you say, any disturbance or any waves that are created in my environment, in my world, resonate in the end from the lack of understanding my true self. And then those waves will radiate out, and as I think I hinted upon earlier, like in the show, will reflect back to me, because it's a the world I experience is a feedback mechanism for myself, my physical body, my my emotions, even my intellectual being. So anyhow, I'm not in balance and in harmony. The feedback system is gonna feed it back to me. It's gonna teach me, okay, something is out of balance, something is not
Like when you do
rested
dishes
in
till
my true
5
self.
a.m.?
Pardon me?
Like when you do dishes till 5 a.m.?
Well, we have a dishwashing machine now, so it's getting much better.
That was
Anyway,
like the other
like to be
day.
rooted, to to be rooted in that self-discovery, it also, for me, it means to recognize that, there's nothing else but self. So even if it comes at me, with different shapes, in different ways, but to find and to see the self, not only in myself, but also in the perceived other selves, if you could even say other than, that is really where that's hinting at. And to have, self-respect then will mean to have respect for myself, for the manifestation of life that is, pushing forward through me, as well as through all other manifestations that are coming forth, whether I like them or however I label them, or want to, label them on different levels, but to continue to live in that awareness that really, there is only, and that sounds like like a cliche, but there's just one. That oneness is really all that is. So therefore there's no real conflict, because why would there be conflict if there's only that one? So it's really cutting through and going, right to the center of it, which is, in truth, there is no real conflict. It just is its beingness.
Right.
And to rest into that, I think that will
So she says,
disperse all lack of self-respect.
she says it's about compromising your needs. The breakdowns, they're about compromising people's needs. What do you think about that, Luis?
Oh, absolutely. And the biggest maxim is to know thyself. And if we don't know ourselves, then it's really hard to know what we like, to know what we want, to know how we ask for things. And there's something that happens, as you do more shadow work, as you do more inner journey situations, like the better that you know yourself, the better you can understand others. So as you're able to really know what you like, what you don't like, what pisses you off, why does it piss you off, then you're able to see that in others, and you're able to connect. And then you can even anticipate their needs because you're able to know yourself, and like that's something that happens. Like, how did you know that? Well, I just pay attention. And that's all it really takes, to know yourself. Once you're able to do that, then you're not going to take anything less than what you think you deserve, And if there is a toxic relationship, you're going to be like, well, I love myself enough to remove myself from this situation, because I know myself and I know what I'm worth. So to be able to get to that point, it's not easy, because there's a lot of hurdles that you have to go through. They call them soft skills, but to me they're like hard,
Yeah. And important.
I would just add, there's a couple of the things that I think, and I ask a lot of people this question, and it's, do you have a method for developing trust? And that could be forgiveness too, but most people don't. And it's not just with other people, it's also with themselves. And usually the person that they trust the least is themselves. And when it comes to like achieving goals and stuff like that, they put their goals way in the back behind everybody else's stuff, behind their job and everything else. And it's like, because people have that, because they don't know how to go about that trust, and because they don't really have a relationship with forgiveness or understanding of forgiveness, it just snowballs into an avalanche at some point, and that's usually where that breakdown happens.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I, the idea of, well, as you were saying that, something came up. We are usually told and taught that we should not toot our own horn, and if we do, we're being egocentric and boastful, and we should put everybody else before ourselves. And I think those things are like, they're kind of like bullshit, because I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's both at the same time. I think that there is a developmental couple of stages that we go from me to us to all of us. And oftentimes when we are in the me-centric, it's like a child. I remember when my wife was pregnant, like the little kids took all the iron and she had to take iron shots and all this. It's like it's all about them, even up to teenage years, we're all like that. And then hopefully we get to a point where, like, okay, it's not just me, it's us, my family. And then you can see a lot of like the nationalist movement being into that us. It's like America, or the Republicans or Democrats, like really tribal. But then you move to hopefully like all of us, where you see that you're just a node in the network and we're all connected. So how can we, like, anything that I do to you is gonna come back to me. Life is a boomerang, and anything that I do to myself will also benefit or damage society, because if I'm just getting high and not doing shit, then I am weighing down society. Somebody takes care of me, because like, there's always a relative helping, there's always a friend helping, and that takes away. So, but if I take care of myself, I trust myself, if I grow myself, and I'm a stronger node in that community, I'm able to help other people. So everything starts within, and everything affects outside of it. So it's kind of like a twofold situation. But how can people know that you're good at something if you don't tell them? They're not mind readers. Again, back to the clarity of communication expectations. Like, there's a difference between just talking shit out of your ass and just being boastful, and being like, okay, I can do this and I can help you, and then like people will see that you are. So who was it? I think it was Muhammad Ali. It's not boasting if you can back it up or something. He said like that. So if you're able to really do what you claim to do, then it's not, it's fine, So we have this idea that we shouldn't do that, and people that tend to do that are the ones that have in their mind, that they were drilled into their mind, that you should never do that because that's selfish, that's baby Jesus Christ or whatever. So really know thyself, back to that.
That's funny. That reminds me, I was a long time ago, I was on a dating site, and this guy said, oh, so what do you do? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like for fun or for work or what? He's like, well, anything. So I listed like 12 items. I said, well, I'm the president of Toastmasters. I work on this charitable organization. I have this job, and I do this job, and I do this thing. And, I also like this and this and this. He goes, well, you don't have to be a show off. I'm like, what? You asked. Like, what? I didn't make this shit up. I just do this stuff.
That reminds me of a lot of like the guys who try to hit on me in like my DMs and stuff, which is hilarious. Because like I've been married for almost 10 years, but even if I were in the dating scene, I definitely wouldn't be trying my luck with people who hit up my DMs. It's just not the place to do that. But they'll be like, oh my gosh, you're a goddess, or, you look amazing, you're beautiful. And if you say anything other than, oh, no, if you're like, oh, thanks, I know. Or, if you're confident about it, like, they get really uncomfortable. They start saying things like, oh, well, you don't have to be like a show off about it. I'm like, weren't you just saying It's okay for you to say it, but it's not okay for me to believe it. Okay.
Yeah.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, I think the dude in question just said that it was because I was Polish. All Polish girls are such show-offs.
Yeah, because they have to have a rationalization for why you're doing the thing. This is, I think, another way that like expectations of a situation get in the way, where like people are triggered because they expect something, you know, to happen and then it doesn't. So then they have to make up some rationalization of why it didn't happen, and they're running with just their expectations or what they think you said, or you know, these things that they've made up in their minds about what you said, and it's that throws me on conversations because I don't know how to address someone who's not talking about what I actually said.
How do you do that?
I usually just tell them I don't think we're talking about the same thing, but they don't believe me.
So what other interesting, controversial experiences have you had? Or did Mike have a question?
No, go ahead. That sounds like a good one.
I had one last question. I had to revise it because you actually already asked
But
it
I just
a little
asked
bit.
one.
Oh, sorry.
Can you repeat it, please?
What other controversial experiences have you had that affected your relationships? Like when you started speaking out on Facebook or something, was there any backlash? I'm just wondering, like, how you dealt with it.
Well, I mean, I've gotten to a point where I've gotten death threats, and I've gotten all sorts. Like, I mean, I've had to use a VPN. I don't want people to know where I live. And like the controversy these days is more like I believe in freedom and free society, and some people say no, that's not going to ever happen, and you should die. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I mean, say hello to my little friend. I'll meet you here, kind of thing, you know. But
That is beautiful.
Other than that, like I don't get in. Like I don't start shit. I have no time for that anymore, you know. So
So you
at
just
this
let them
point,
go? If they don't like you, you're just like, have a good life.
Yeah, one of my mentors, Jake Shannon, because like at first I used to get so much hate, right? And I mean I still do, but he taught me something. He said, focus on the lovers, not the haters. So, because like I would get so like nervous and you know worked up about like people telling me all these horrible things, and he said like just ignore them. They're always angry, and it's not about you. It's just internal process. So you know I'm like, okay, you know, that makes sense at this point. Like I mean I don't initiate any kind of trouble or anything, and so if there's people that are angry, it's usually because it's their own, you know, issues. So I just move on and focus on people that I can help, or you know.
James Drew talks about vitriol. James Drew is a guest scheduled for next Monday. And he talks about vitriol and how whether the feedback is positive or negative, it still feeds his soul. It feeds him no matter what. It's still feedback.
Yeah, and you know, my mom said at some point you have to take things and see where they come from. So, meaning if there's people that you respect, and there's people that you know they're in peers or better off than you, yeah, listen. If there's somebody that are like in a shithole, or they're just angry throwing shit at you, like why should you listen to them? You know, whatever. Like they're already angry. But you know, at some point maybe there's something that you can learn and you'll take it if there is a level of truth. You know, like how can they be right? You know, but if they're just angry and telling you words that are like, you know, incendiary and abrasive, like I don't have time for that. You know, like I don't want to fight.
Yeah.
All right, I've got something. How about the relationship that we have with our environment, Luis? How does that? I mean, to me, I think that's a really kind of powerful relationship that most people don't even consider, but it is one in which it really takes some open-minded thinking. But how do you go about relating to the environment around you and really kind of drawing the energy from the environment, as well as is establishing a relationship with your environment?
When you say environment, what do you mean?
I mean everything, the everything around you, not just the people and the relationships that you have with different people, but the relationships that you have with everything else,
Like
Okay, thank you.
mosquitoes?
even mosquitoes.
There's, like for the most part, the way that I see that some things work is we are like tuning forks. And when there's a tuning fork that is vibrating and one that isn't, if you put it close, the other one starts vibrating. It picks up the vibration. So there are people that are called the frequency holders, which is, if you will, mainstream. So you can allow yourself to be tuned to the mainstream, and you can also create your own vibration and then broadcast that. And that's how we create change. So in our environment, it's pretty important to make it our own, to merge with it, to be able to, like, every night before I go to sleep, I let up some incense or some sage, and I walk around with my spirit guides, make sure things are, the way I want them to, and I create, Reiki, energy vortexes. Like, I do all sorts of things to make the house feel different. When I wake up, I do the same thing, and when people come to the house, they notice and they actually talk about it.
Isn't that what
Intention.
homemaking is?
Yes, exactly. 100%. So the environment, you can let it affect you, or you can affect it yourself. One of my parents said at some point when I was little, you have to be able to walk through the fire without getting burnt. And what does that mean? Like, you can be in a shitty situation, but like ultimately you are able to, you have the freedom here. Like Viktor Frankl ultimately said, the last freedom is the freedom of choosing your attitude and your narrative. So, and that's what initiates, the change in the world, as you're able to move things and I guess be even stubborn at some point, because you have a vision. And a lot of times, a lot of us with visions tend to be seen as crazy and stubborn, but in reality, we just like see a better place and we want to get to that,
Well, maybe we are crazy. That's okay. I've been called
maybe.
worse.
Oh yeah, I've been called that too, but like I think it's crazy not to want a better environment, or to be stuck and then married to things that are not growing us. But I mean, ultimately, they are growing us even in the pain and misery. But you can choose to grow through misery and pain, or consciousness and awareness. So with the foresight of, you can tell like the signs that life's giving you, and if you don't pick it up, then it's gonna slap you with some difficult situation. So you have those two choices.
Yeah, I would agree to that a lot, because there's freedom in that choice, and in order to live that and to be aware of that, you have to be aware of the choice that there are, because whether you make a conscious choice or not, even that is a choice, to stay unconscious and to stay in ignorance of the choices that you could take, and the relationships that you could build, then that is still within your own power. Even the most presumably powerless people or disempowered people, you still have that power of choice, and you can choose how you relate and what kind of perspective you take on things. And that brings me back again to the feedback system. So the choice that you take will result in, so those are the waves that you send out, and those are the other, you call them holders of frequency, that you resonate with. So your experience will be matched by what you're sending out, and also by what you're tuning in to receive, right? I was remembered earlier, and that kind of in my mind pulled together. Not too long ago we talked about egregor, and then Mike brought up the charm thing, and then it bounces back with something dear to my heart, which is permaculture, which is also about creating relationships or recognizing relationships that exist, all around us. So You don't necessarily have to have the ability or the technical skill to do A, B, C, but to recognize that, okay, the sun goes up there, and oh, there's the chicken, and the chicken has so many more functions than just for the meat or for whatever. And then to put elements together so that they can so that you can use the natural synergies that are already in place, but that if you not use them, they just go to waste. But by creating, by recognizing, and then facilitating relationships that are there potentially, we are able to do so much, and we're able to organize, or then to facilitate an organization that is already there in nature, in the natural world that we live in, that really will enhance the flow, and in permaculture, permaculturally speaking, will give us the maximum yield and benefit, without disrupting and without being harmful to the natural world that we live
So you're
in.
saying we should implement that in the human relationships too, like make little. But that's what your charm thing is about, right?
And the aggregate thing too. So we're building that for ourselves and with the group that we're creating, and that came to my mind also when you were talking about the pre-sensing, because it's a conscious way of bringing a certain vibe, a certain energy, into a conversation, into like a group setting, or into the house, into your environment, into relating, to your environment beyond your social environment even. And then the charm thing again to me is a practical tool to kind of ease into that, because there's rough and ignorant ways of relating to people, or even like cutting off, making it difficult for people to hear you, and to be on the same page, or to recognize that you're doing something actually valuable. And then that's how I'm getting the charm thing, that there's actually a technique, there's a way of facilitating relationships through communication, through how you hold the fork, through easing up into established norms, so to say, that that also have the possibility of making it easy for everybody to sit at the same table, and to talk to each other on a certain kind of level. They kind of create a common ground.
I don't know if I like established norms. Like that doesn't really sit well with me. But I think one with nature does. And I think that when you're one with nature, your communication, it flows easier. Does that make sense? And an interesting thought about the egregor, right? We've talked about the egregors a lot, and egregors. And do you know what an egregor is, Luis?
No.
So an egregor is like the energetic, spiritual energy that happens between when two or more people meet for a common purpose. So that's the old definition of a church. And so I've always thought of it as something that happens between people, like the electrical energy that happens between people, that sort of takes on its own traits. Like, belonging to a certain club will make you want to be on time because the club kind of demands it, right? You know what I mean? Like, so, and you take on characteristics of whatever group you associate with. But in reality, the egregor is a much more individual thing as well, because as we go and we interact with other people, we're building our own personal egregor, this electromagnetic being. And like Mr. Rogers said in the movie, everyone you've ever known has loved you into being. Even the people that made mistakes, even the people that you were angry with, they've loved you into being. They showed you what you didn't want to do, and therefore you have become a different person. So I think that in building our personal egregor, the relationship is internalized.
I love that. That's pretty cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, we have a whole show about it, I think, a few weeks back. Don't we?
I don't know if it was put that beautifully, but really, yeah, we're getting better at it as we go along.
Well, also we're like the new thoughts, as we're sharing thoughts in this show, right? The new thoughts, birth new thoughts, I wouldn't have been able to say that 6 months ago, but now after all this interplay, we can formulate thoughts and ideas so much easier.
I kind of wanted to, oh, sorry.
Just wait till James Drew shows up next week. No, go ahead.
I kind of wanted to expand on a question that was put earlier, and it was about how controversy has affected your relationships. And I know we touched on like when you go into a controversial stance or topic, you have a tendency to lose people. But I was curious, especially when you were talking about like death threats and stuff. Like, I can just imagine like if it was like me or my husband, and we were getting like one of us was getting death threats, the other one would be like concerned. How has taking a controversial stance affected how you communicate in your very personal relationships with the people who are affected and see have are affected by your actions, because we always affect other people's lives who we're involved with.
Yeah. Well, my wife would tell me, "Why are you doing that? You're just like rattling the ants nest kind of thing." So obviously, like, but I guess I don't do a lot of things of like trying to get people angry. It's just a natural byproduct because going back to what we talked about, um, people believe that they are their own beliefs instead of I am me and I believe this. Like that belief is me, and if you're attacking it, you're attacking me. So I'm gonna kick your ass. So I've learned that to an extent that I instead of creating, so this is like a $10,000 seminar that we've taught. Instead of giving an opinion, when you give a strong opinion, what happens? People toughen up and they're like, I don't know. So how do you allow them to do the Trojan horse and internalize that? You ask them a question. You turn your really strong opinion into a question and then throw it at them. And then they're not feeling attacked because you're asking them a question. And then now you're making them think. So you're creating inception also. So just knowing how, like back to Murdoch, like being able to speak clarity and ultimately, I mean, you become friends because like you would never change the minds of people that hate you, and if you're abrasive and if you're like whatever. So how do you do that? By being vulnerable, by being true, by like this is it. What do you think? This is why. What do you think? Well, I don't feel like that. Well, why not? Let's talk about it. But so it does take an amount of time and energy, and most times you don't want to spend that. So why go halfway? So either do it or not.
What came to my mind just a while ago is that using the same thing that you recognize, which is that they identify with their opinion, that they identify with their beliefs. So if the one that is identified with his or her opinion, throws those threats or those comments at you, then to me that would mean that is a challenge to me, or that maybe the task for me then is to make sure that I don't identify with whatever immediate emotional reaction or fear or whatever pattern that comes up in me, because that the one that I truly am, is not gonna is never afraid of anything at all, cannot die, will ever be there. So that is maybe there's a game into that, that it seems easier sometimes to recognize things in other people, and then maybe the feedback system loops it right back to ourselves to challenge us, then also to not identify with the suit that we wear, with the car that we're driving, thinking that we are the car, thinking that we are the suit that we're wearing because it fits so snug and because it looks so good, and we never really learn to make a difference between the one who wears the suit and between the driver of the car. And so yeah, that's a thought that just came to me.
One of my teachers, his name was Bill Harris. He passed away a couple of years ago. He actually appeared in the movie The Secret. He said that non-attachment is actually not a good idea. And I'll quickly explain that. So if you're not attached and you don't care, and if you don't care, people don't care that you care or not. Like so, one like basically kind of goes down to, I don't know how much you, I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care. So you have to play this game of, yeah, you're a spiritual person being in a body, but you have to be invested. You have to, like he was telling me, I am attached to my bank account. I am attached to my children. I am attached to my wife, to my business. The difference is the moment that I leave this body, I am not going to fret it. Because if you're not attached to those things, then you have no level of ownership, and then people can play games on you and all your work goes to shit. So you have to be like able to connect. like when you go watch, you go to the theater and watch a play, you want the actor and actress to feel like they are their role, you know? Because if you see that they're not playing the role, then you're like, I want my money back. They're not into the role. Right? So you're playing that role and you're into it and you're attached. But at the same time, when you get out of the stage, it's a role. And just kind of like yeet kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's you said it earlier in the was it about a half an hour ago? Then it's not either A or B, but it's A as well as B. So it's the two at the same time, and there is no real contradiction between that, because you can be attached to the role that you're playing. You can be involved in the drama, in the movie, and whatever thing, but you still can retain, you still can have, in a back corner of your truth, you can say, oh, there's something beyond that. You're not all of that. That's who I am right now. I'm playing my role as a father, as a, I don't know, as a capoeira teacher, as this and that, whatever roles we're taking on in this life. We're playing them, and we're playing them in the best way possible that we can. So we are engaged in our world. We are physical beings, we are mental beings, we are emotional beings. So this is like, the ego that we are. We have a personality, and I feel we have been given that. And why not play with it? It's a role that has been given to us, so why not play it the best way possible, and at the same time retain that kind of essence that is within all of that as well. So we're not completely, we're not lose ourselves in the role, thinking that that drama that we're playing is all there is, but there's something beyond that as well.
You hit the nail on the head though when you said
I
it's
was
a
muted.
part. No, you said it's a part.
I
And it
just
is.
I have to repeat what I said because I was muted on the internet. Drama is part of the essence of life. That's how we squeeze the zest out of life. And then you said that
That's
it's
you
just
hit
a
the nail on
small
the head
part.
there.
Yeah.
It is the important word. That'd be the difference between a great actor or actress who goes on stage and they play their part because they relate to it and they play that role, and then they go home and they
They're still
continue to do
playing
this.
that
I
role.
see this happen with strippers who go to work and they wear the outfits and they look really good and they're really good dancers and they make the money and they do, and then they go home and they wear the stripper clothes around the house, like to Walmart, and it's like it's not a job to them anymore. They are that person. And it'd be the same way if like you were an actress or an actor and you went home and you just couldn't, like, that was your entire life. That drama is not your entire life. It's just a role that you're playing. It's a part, and there are other parts to step into.
Yeah, and you know why I'm saying that? Because I was thinking when Luis was talking, I was thinking of monks. You know how monks, they climb up to the top of the mountain and they detach and they just like go upstairs? Well, if you want to go upstairs, just kill yourself. It's the shortest path. You don't need to live upstairs when you're downstairs. You're either downstairs and feeling life, or you're upstairs and you're detached.
Yeah, well, I don't want to tell people to kill themselves. I don't think that's a good idea.
No, I'm not saying
I-
like that, but you know what I mean? Like live life or don't live life. Don't like be halfway in between.
Yeah, I don't think there's like a lot of merit into being a monk in the Himalayas, because that's easy. Like if you don't, so the real deal is to be a monk in Manhattan, with all the hustle and bustle. And a lot of people say, well, that's not nature. Well, guess what? There's nothing outside of nature. Cities are a byproduct of humans, which are part of nature. Therefore, cities are natural. All of the things there that exist that you see, my little fan that is USB, is freaking natural. There's nothing else. The 5G internet is natural. So just like really, and that's gonna just freak people out, and they're gonna hate me for saying that, but I mean, it's the truth, right? So to be able to know nature and to know that you are nature, you're not separated from nature, and the problems are like actually the obstacle is the way. You can get to a higher states of consciousness through going through the shit, and a psilocybin ceremony, I was seeing that all of the problems that you have in your life are opportunities to see the real you. They burn you. They're like, blacksmith that puts the iron into freaking fire and then like it smashes it and then it becomes the sword. Like you cannot become a sword without the fire and without the blows, you know. So all of those things make you a fantastic piece. But so if we're just like, hands up, don't shoot, I'm out. Like but a lot of those things happen because we don't have enough bandwidth. Because it's like back to the second law of thermodynamics. There's a lot of input coming in and not a lot of output going out. So you either need to lower your stress or to increase your skills or to increase your output somehow. So, and that's what is really needed instead of just, wanting to go to the mountains and meditate forever.
I love the fact that you mentioned that humans are a part of nature and that therefore the product of the product of humans is also natural. That is probably one
Most
of
controversial.
one of the most controversial topics that I have, especially with anyone who's talking about spiritual practices, because I think to do otherwise, to think that we are separate from nature is to do humans a disservice. It means that our actions, our desires are unnatural, which is not, it is, I think, unnatural. It aligns in the body with immoral. Like it's wrong. And wrong things cause energy to redirect in the body and causes disease. Like the
And
more you are on the wrong path, the more negative energy, I guess, you're gonna pick up. Kind of like
yeah.
karmic.
And by the way, apologies to Heather. I missed her message earlier. It was there, and now there's a new message. You're most welcome, and we love when we're on point. I just didn't want to ignore her, but I must have missed her message. Yeah.
Luis,
You're
you
welcome.
mentioned some of your like daily practices and stuff like that, but is there things that and you talked about kind of playing roles and stuff like that? Is there things that you do in your daily practices as well as maybe rituals that you have in your life that affect the way that you go about your life when you're doing different things? You've got a professional life and you've got you've got groups that you're a part of and so forth. Could you let us know a little bit about how those things might interact into the rituals and the things that you do on a daily?
I think that this is going to be really idiosyncratic and it changes per person. But I like to make my morning coffee and really kind of be meditative about it. And some people will say, well, coffee, you're drinking coffee, you're not spiritual. Spiritual people don't drink coffee. Well, whatever, So really getting into what you're doing and the idea of embodiment, like we're really in here feeling and seeing and smelling and touching and being human and the messiness that comes with it, like there is this saying that before enlightenment, you chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, you chop wood and carry water. You still have to work. You still have to poop and wipe yourself. You still have to wash the dishes. Like you cannot get out of the human experience
It's so unfair.
I mean, shoot, like, and that's like some of what like the, people in the left area of politics want to say. Like, my daughter, she's 15, and some of her friends says, like, I'm on my period. The pads should be given to me because like I didn't ask for this period. I'm like, well, shit, I have to eat. I didn't ask for this. I have to. It's just like so ridiculous. Like I have to have shelter. All things considered, I would rather specialize. Well, anyway, I digress.
We like that
mindfulness experience. Creating my coffee, and I really like to take a shower, and I have a speaker there. And I listen to something like Jordan Peterson or like, something that increases my intellect. Because like the minute you open the water in the shower, the water helps you get into alpha state. So it's kind of early. You're in alpha-ish state, and then you have the water. So you're entering into, a really kind of like quasi-trance thing. So something that like a book, an audiobook, or something that is inspiring, makes you smart, whatever. So that's kind of what I do. And I dry myself. I make my own cologne, and I'm intentional about what I'm doing. And this is totally idiosyncratic, but if I put a button-up shirt, I can do better work because like if I don't brush my teeth and if I don't cut my hair, like you're kind of like not. You're like you wouldn't go to the office. that, so it kind of makes you do a little shittier work. So being like standing up straight, shoulders back, dressing up nice. I'm not saying suit and tie all day every day, but to where you're decent. It really helps you do better. And like I was saying, so you don't drink coffee, fine, whatever, eat your weed, I don't know, but being mindful with it. And I think that being present and that's like the most important thing. So one time I came out of an ayahuasca ceremony because I came in asking for life purpose, and I came out with empowering others and being present. So I noticed how those two are really powerful medicines. So as you become present in your day, then like that is the highest spiritual order, because you're like, so the whole idea of meditation is focus. You cannot just eliminate thoughts, but you need to focus it and heal it. So if you are present, like some of the Buddhist monks, as they're eating in their training, they're like, example, putting fork in broccoli and mouth, like they're narrating their experience. So they're like forcing themselves to be in here right now. And then it just becomes natural. Like you're not thinking about, like, I mean, how many times like people have sex and they're thinking about the grocery list of Whole Foods? Like, that's not how it should work, right? So it's really important to be present. So whatever grounding practices that people are like, I really like to go shooting to a shooting range, like that to me grounds the heck out of me, because and one of my friends, he's actually into like meditation and all this, and he was able to understand the presence and like the mindfulness that one has to be able to hit crosshairs, at 25 yards with a tiny gun. And so, I mean, anything could be turned into a spiritual practice.
Yeah. However you
Love
build your personal egregor. I don't even know. I've never heard it referred to as an individual thing, but I really do think that the electromagnetic body can be created just the same.
Well,
interpersonally.
if you apply IFS, that would make sense because you have conflicting personalities inside you at all times. The egregor would be you. Self is the egregor. It's the ambassador and how it interacts with the external world. All your other parts are self-centered. They're centered around self. So they have to create an egregor, and it's your internal family who you have like your security system, like your fallback.
Well, I hate to say it, but we are running out of time.
That's right.
I really, really appreciate, Luis, your input. Man, I feel like I've learned so much just listening. And man, I'm so glad that you were here and came. But let's just go around the room. Everybody, what did you take out of this show that really made a difference for you?
I take out of it that controversy really is it is necessary. It's part of our lives on many levels, and it's something that helps us progress and helps us to develop and to cut through to that beingness where there is no controversy. So it sounds like an oxymoron, but the one that we truly are, that we really are, there is no controversy in that. But yet we're here, we're experiencing controversy, and surely not without reason. And so to see it as a feedback mechanism to make the next leap forward, it is certainly something that we should take head on, because if we were not supposed to master that situation, why would it be in our lives right now? So in whichever way it manifests, don't shy away, but to confront it. And I think we really were able to learn a lot. And I thank you so much, Luis, for coming on and for sharing your personal perspective on it, and your the clues that you have gotten out of it, the mastery of taking controversy and of challenges that life keeps on throwing at us all the while, and of sharing that with us. I'm really grateful for that, and I look forward to get to know more about you and to listen to your to your programs. And I hope please don't leave us without sharing some of the places where we can find you and where we can find out more about you and your work. And looking really forward to talk to you again, hopefully very soon. And I'll be surely taking a lot home from this session. I'm really grateful to you, then to all of my beautiful co-hosts, and to our listeners as well. for staying with us for so long and granting us 90 minutes of your day, which is especially in these times certainly very busy. And so
I
I
think
feel
he's
tremendously
encompassed it all by now. I think that like there is no more to be said. Luis, do share your contact or where they can find you.
Now, how many books have you written now?
Well, I don't have books written. I guess I do help editing some books. But anyway, so emancipatedhuman.com is my consulting firm. LuisFernandoMises.com is the activist site.
Which, can you repeat that again?
Yes, LuisFernandoMises.com.
Okay.
Or
yes,
just find my name on Facebook, also on Instagram. I guess just be prepared, because I don't just post intellectual stuff. I post a lot of dumb memes as well. So, it's funny, it's the balance of life. And Instagram, Facebook. I don't really use Twitter much, but I am Emancipated H. And I think that's it. I'm super grateful to all of you guys for inviting me to your living room and being here with you guys today. Super grateful.
Nice. Does
Thank
anybody?
you so much. Go
What
ahead.
was the movie that you mentioned? You mentioned you were in a movie, or you were helping on that. The Secret documentary?
No. One of my teachers was in the movie The Secret.
Oh.
His name is Bill Harris. And, The Secret is a movie that a lot of, I guess, people, with law of attraction and all that would kind of be acquainted with. But the funny thing about it is that he told me that movie was just kind of a little bit of BS. So they were at a conference and they interviewed a bunch of people, and then they turned it into a movie. So because I was doing I watched a movie and I was like, oh, I'm really interested. And then I did research, and only 3 people out of the 12 were legit. And out of those 3 that were legit, I found Bill Harris and I connected with him and I started taking some courses. And then I actually have an interview with him too, became my mentor and super amazing fellow.
Nice.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much. Thank you to our audience for your time and attention. We will be back on Wednesday. And what is the topic for Wednesday? We're going to be talking about,
Oh gosh.
let me know.
Let me see if I
That
can
pet
make this
food
happen.
remedies?
No, not
Oh,
this week. Oh my goodness.
Home
that's not
remedies.
it.
Is it home
It was
remedies?
home remedies.
Yes, it's home remedies. I have to get a handle of this whole setup.
and then next Monday at the same time and place, we're going to be talking to James True about
That's
the
right.
alchemy of loving relationships.
That's right.
So
And the
thank you, everybody.
Pet food maybe next week on Wednesday.
And pet food. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Luis.
I'm just gonna play the outro. Thanks everybody. Bye.